Hello again. My name is Dr. Bill Johnson. I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Exploring Our Schools. Today we're just going to have kind of a wide open discussion about something which is, I think, certainly gotten a lot of play in the news recently, but something that we feel very, very strongly about. And these are the graduation requirements that we have for our kids here at Southside High School and in the Rockville Center Public Schools, and its import on the entire curriculum in our school district. There's lots of debate about something you probably heard lots about, the Common Core. We need to talk about it in the context of what it is that we've been doing for many years here with the International Baccalaureate program, and ask ourselves, what is the symmetry between what is the Common Core, what are the expectations for students who come through our system and graduate, and what do we expect of students who participate in the International Baccalaureate. So on that note, I'd like to introduce my two guests today, John Murphy, who is the principal of Southside High School, Chris Pelletieri, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum. You know what, I already introduced the first question, so I guess I don't know who wants to jump in and start with it, but what really do we expect of kids? When somebody goes through Southside High School and finishes after 13 years, what is it we want them to be able to do?
It's not a thing. It's a skill set. And I think what we've evolved into is an understanding that it's not a test, nor is it a series of tests that is the goal. The goal isn't to pass a test. The goal is to exit here with a profile that says, I'm ready to educate myself. There are different models out there, but we've always aspired toward the same thing. David Conley's has actually the...
Well, you're not assuming that when they go to college, they're going to educate themselves, but...
Well, or be in a position to be more in control of their own education.
But certainly continue their education.
Correct. And individual empowerment is becoming increasingly important with the advent of online courses, with the use of mass media, and the deluge of information that students on a regular day, whether they're in college or not, have to discreetly go through and differentiate fact from fiction. It's about citizenship, democracy, and it's about being in control of your own direction. You know, David Conley's model is one of many, but it's one that you and I have spoken about over the last...
Nobody knows who
years.
David Conley is.
David Conley is a professor in charge of what's called EPIC, and he's a liaison with the Association of American Universities, and has published a series of articles on what does it mean to be college and career ready before they even talked about it. And his last model has 4 prongs. It's really know, think, act, go, basically. What do they need to know? What do they need to learn how to think about, and how do they think? How do they act in terms of behaviors that are conducive to learning, and how do they go or transition to the next stage of their lives? And he lists a series of skill sets. The reason that I like the model is that it's easy to wrap your head around, but it's also not overly simplified. In other words, there are just competencies in each of those that we have built a system around that prepares the student.
So where do we fit? Where does... All right, assuming that those 4 prongs are where we should be in terms of college readiness and college preparation, if in fact that's what we're about. But it's just not college. I mean, the assumption is that college is just another step. When people leave college and continue into either the workforce or their graduate school, we are just one step along the line. College is another step. The assumption is that people, whether they leave us tomorrow and go into the workforce, are in fact going to have to learn throughout their entire life. I cannot imagine what the world tomorrow is going to necessarily be, having just lived through something I couldn't imagine was going to happen to begin with. Think about what we've done with iPads in this school district. 10 years ago, they didn't even exist, and yet they are such an integral part of what we do now in the system.
I think that we're tasked with providing a skill set for students for jobs that may not exist right now. And you think about some of the jobs that exist today that didn't exist 10 years ago, as you talked about. I think we have to prepare our students for college and careers with the mindset around 21st century teaching and learning. And that's the 4 C's. Students need to be able to leave us to be able to collaborate, to communicate, to think critically, and to be creative. And I think whether they go to colleges or careers, they need to have that skill set. And I think that's something that we work to instill in all of our students.
You know what's fascinating about all of this? We've essentially imposed this model on the teaching staff that we have in the school district. By introducing the iPads into the environment that we have, we've said, guess what? Anybody who worked in the school district is a lifetime learner. So they've all had to go back and been trained essentially on utilizing a whole new skill set.
All of our teachers model that belief
Right.
that we are lifelong learners, and all undertake professional development throughout the years, throughout their careers. We are in professional development all the time. I know you go to conferences and meetings as well. So we are an embodiment of that, lifelong learners.
Yeah.
And I think the direction that our professional development has taken, especially over the last 3 years, is indicative of that. It's not a new skill set, but different skills have increased importance. And what we're hearing from the science community, not just in terms of research, but in terms of what they're looking for, is that the day of sitting in a cubicle in isolation, writing code are long gone. And whether it's Google or a local software company, they need people with the interpersonal skills who can go and steal the best ideas from their colleagues.
So he talked about collaboration. One of the C's that he talked about was collaboration.
So we practice what we preach. In terms of professional development, we're more attuned, in my case, 6 to 12, to what each other's doing. And within subject areas, so that there aren't silos of learning going on in the high school, where the Spanish, social studies, and math teachers are talking. And thinking about that common concept, that skill set, that problem solving, so that the students have a more consistent learning experience. So when they go out, they say, wait a second, I've seen this before. Whether they're engineers or English teachers, there's a competency that goes beyond just data and facts.
So let me ask you a question. I mean, I pretty much know the answer, but I think it's worthwhile putting the question out there. Why IB? Why the International Baccalaureate? I mean, you've been talking you have a series of 4. You have a series of 4 that came from David Conley. Put those things together. How do they mesh with the IB, and why IB?
May I?
Please.
Okay. The IB is not a testing service. It's a program and a philosophy of learning. For a district to participate fully, they have to be aligned philosophically, which we are. It is a program of study that the student decides their own level of participation. But there is a consistency across any subject area. For instance, and I was thinking about this the other day, it's great that our IB business course has taken root, and I'm really happy for it. But if you start to look at what they're learning, case study analysis, problem solving, mathematical competency, it's another vehicle for the student to learn those skill sets that we just spoke of. Whether they go into business or not, it almost doesn't matter. That the program takes care of the conceptual understandings and gives students opportunities in multiple classes to learn that, so they see a cohesiveness to their learning. So the student ends up with a profile that here are my relative strengths and weaknesses when I leave here, both extracurricular within school areas. I have to try challenging coursework in all of them. There's no place to hide, because in the real world, that's the existence. In college or wherever, you're going to have mathematical literacy, scientific understanding, historical understanding. So we give them a program of learning that really puts them in a position to not just be ready for university, but to know exactly what's to be expected of them.
So, the underlying question again, I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but when they leave us, are they prepared? And how do we know that? In other words, look, we know about the IB and the standards. We know kids work very hard and diligently throughout the entire school year. I understand all about the assessment systems that we have built in and the multiplicity of opportunities they have to demonstrate that they know and learn. Is that preparing our kids?
Yes.
How do we know?
Again, like the plan for preparedness, there's no one thing. There's research. There's our own internal research.
Yes, I think that's very important.
There's anecdotal evidence. We've done 2 studies over the last 10 years that have, through following up with our students 4 and 5 years after graduation and asking them where they are now. And over 90% of our students who start a matriculated college program in September following graduation graduate in 4 years.
If,
They take at least 2 IB courses before graduating.
right, that's a very important piece to this. So what happens is that they live through the experience at Southside prior to leaving us, So it's easily replicable and they feel very adequately prepared. I mean, that's the sense that I get when kids come back. Not that a whole lot come back and talk to me. I know they talk a lot more to you, but certainly that's the message that we get. They're prepared.
The system that you've built, or we've built as a community, ensures that students are getting IB classes, that virtually all of our students in IB in 11th grade in social studies and also in ELA.
Yeah.
And so we recognize, and looking at that research and recognizing that we need to create a system that ensures that our students are going to be exposed to that rigorous curriculum now, while they can be supported in a high school environment, which will prepare them for the future. And we bring our students back all the time, as you stated. And I know, and they speak to the younger youngsters that are here still at the high
Right.
school and talk about those experiences.
Bigger question. We hear about the Common Core, and we know that New York State has essentially adopted the Common Core and is now in the process of revising it so that it will be, I guess, amended in some respects, and I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like when it's done. Do we align with the Common Core? Or are we just kind of a maverick organization that's moving in this direction when in fact the Common Core is over here?
I would argue we're better at the Common Core standards than the Common Core is.
Okay,
Yeah, we were Common Core before there was Common Core.
Correct.
okay.
Before that term, I think, came into existence.
So what's been the problem at the secondary level? I mean, look, I know without going into a lot of the discussions about what have taken place at the elementary and the middle school level with the amendments to the Common Core, many of things having to do with developmentally inappropriateness, and so that I think is being addressed. If we took math, what happened?
The tests.
Okay,
Standards are standards. They're statements about learning that are usually irrefutable. And non-controversial. The controversy arises when you find out how you're going to assess them. And in a good formal model, you develop the end product first.
right.
And then you make that transparent and available to the learning community, and you say, this is what we aspire towards, this is what students need to be able to do. Then we develop a curriculum following that.
Mhm.
And then the Common Core, unfortunately, came the reverse. They developed these standards, and the tests were a big secret until the time of the reveal, and lo and behold, they were a surprise. And it created the illusion of a gotcha, not a learning opportunity. And there have been serious flaws in the program, and it's a South Side issue. This is a New York State issue.
Well, sometimes the example I give is you know, we have the program that we have, studies that we have at Southside and at Sunrise Highway, and it's taking us along the south shore of the island. And then we have the Southern State. It takes us to a different location,
Yep.
not necessarily the same place, which is the Common Core. It's supposed to be two parallel roads taking us to the same spot. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that the Common Core, as we know it in math, is in fact bringing us to the same spot. So what are we doing?
At the risk of we're standing our ground. Now, that doesn't mean we're not doing anything.
Right.
It means that the philosophical approach that we've always used with regard to getting students, wherever possible, prepared for IB coursework is the consistency that we have enjoyed, that we continue to enjoy, because there is an alignment with the standards and the
Correct.
aims of objectives.
Okay.
As a result of that, our students do very well.
We know what works. We're very comfortable with what works. We're very comfortable with the idea that our kids are involved in the International Baccalaureate, and to the extent that they are, and in math in the AP. I mean, it's not that we're trying to,
Correct.
the AP Calculus, A, B, and A, and the two calculus courses that we offer. But the point is, we're not going to change simply for the sake of somebody telling us that we should, when in fact we're not sure that it's going to take us to the right place.
Correct, especially, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, like I said, we've asked for more. We've always pushed for more. We're going to continue to do that.
Okay.
But more isn't, right, more learning, not, harder isn't the answer. Making things more difficult does not necessarily mean increased learning has occurred. Look, we're constantly revisiting our model. We've taken a long, hard look at what students really need in terms of advanced math courses. The increase in the need for statistical understanding and analysis is something we're taking very seriously, and looking at the AP statistics enrollment and the extent to which students would be better served by that. We're always skeptical of our own understanding, knowing that we're always going to be making revisions. We're not married to one path.
We've always pushed for Algebra 2 trig, we've always pushed for calculus, we've always pushed for AP statistics. Excuse me. We'll continue to do that. That's what I mean by asking for more. And our students have rose to those high expectations.
It's so interesting to see the connection between math and success later on. Not everybody loves the idea that we push their kids into higher level math, and yet it's such a critical piece. You have any explanation? I mean, just right off the top of your head, why there is? I know David Conley had done some work. They did work at the ACT. Cliff Edelman had done it years ago, connecting higher level math to success later on in college.
I think it's complicated. I don't think there's any one thing. I think if you use the advanced math classes.
But it goes beyond math, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's an indicative of a student's transcript. It attests to their prior achievement, but also to the fact that there's been that which preceded it had put them in a position to do that. I think there's a logic and a linear sequential problem solving that comes with math at that level that transfers to all different disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
I think it reinforces really good learning habits. But there's a cultural component too, that if the student has navigated to a learning environment that gets them there, chances are it's been a pretty solid learning environment, right? So I think there are bigger issues here at stake.
Okay. That's a great segue, because when you talk about bigger issues, we're almost towards kind of coming to the end of this, but I can't walk away from this conversation without also saying we're really talking about human experience, human beings. We want kids to make good decisions, good judgments, not just be prepared to learn more. The overall human experience. I know that theory of knowledge is a unique experience. We used to call it epistemology, so that we would be able to evaluate what's right, what's not, what's true, what's not. Tell me a little bit, John, about that other whole aspect of what we want to see from our kids.
We want students to be able to put the pieces of the puzzle back together. In life, it's rare that you and I say, well, now I'm going to be a social studies historian, and now I'm going to be an English person. That life asks you to pull things off of the bookshelf randomly. And our experiential learning experiences that is typified by TOK, but also goes through the extended essay, asks the student, how do you know? And what is it to know artistically, to know scientifically, to know historically? And is there a common thread when you're going to navigate the truth with a capital T moving forward, wherever it is? What are the tools that are at your disposal? To what extent are we all artists, just as we're all scientists? And what is it to learn artistically, creatively, as you said? So that the student doesn't walk away with this artificial paradigm, well, I'm going to be creative in art class, and then I'm going to be logical in science, and then I'm going to be verbal in history class. Well, life doesn't work that way.
But the overall message to our kids by involvement in higher level courses, expectations, is there an ethical, a moral, underlying message in all of this about, we talk about misinformation, the world of misinformation on the electronic media that kids experience on a regular basis. We all do, where the information comes from. What about making those decisions? Does all of this come together in helping our students, once they leave us, become prepared to become a really good citizen?
Let me jump on that for a second, John.
Please.
So we all have a computer in our pocket that knows everything, that will give me the answer. Any question I could ask it, I can Google anything and get that information. So we have to prepare our students for a world in which that can take place, which they're living in. But they need to be able to vet that information. They need to be able to assess that information. I use that word assess purposefully because I see it all around this building. It's a word, if I had to define in one word, something that really sticks to me when it comes to Southside High School, It's the ability to assess. So I need to be able to assess all that information that's out there. And is the first source I go to real? Is this real news that I'm reading? Is this fake news? There's so much information out there. We have to, again, help our students to think critically about that information and turn that information to something I can communicate to people. So I think assess is an important word, and we need to be able to train our students, help our students develop a skill set to be able to do that.
We gotta end, I gotta
Okay.
tell you. This is almost like one of those slice of life types of movies. This is always a continuing conversation. I think, not that we have all the answers, but I think what we need to do is to give the community a sense of our commitment to higher standards, their children, that we view as their children as human beings. It is the human experience of going through our system, as well as the living with learning and teaching them and having them become a lifelong learner. So at the end of the day, whatever the experience is, I really welcome always the opportunity to talk to you guys about these subjects. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Learned a little bit about our commitment to this community and to our children. And I really say that because I believe it, that we share in raising our children in this community. This is all about community. This is all about making the world in which our children are going to go a better place for them, and teaching them how to make it a better place for all of us. So thank you very much for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Thanks, John. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.
Okay.